It'll be great.
I'm Ann Bishop, and I'm Executive Director of Texas Public Employees Association. And as Carla said, the RSEA represents retirees only. Texas Public Employees Association represents state employees and retirees. I apologize in advance if I'm skipping around a little bit. I appreciate the efficiency of combining the charges, and they're all related.
Sure.
So I'll try to make sure that my comments are
you.
related. I will first say that, as I said earlier, I've been around for a long time, and it's usually much harder for the legislature to have extra money than it is not enough money. But there's no lack of people wanting to spend it, and I'm certainly one of them as well. So I just want to get that on the record for both retirees and active employees. So one of the things that Senate Bill 321 last session did was really change the contribution strategy of the fund, which is huge. I know it sounds like a little bit of nuance and sort of nomenclature, but it changed from a contribution strategy that was based on a percent of payroll to a contribution pattern strategy that was a combination of percent of payroll and the legacy payments. So that is what, in part, helped cause the fund to start amortizing the unfunded ability. And I bring that to your attention because LICOS is in a similar situation. LICOS has a percent, as Porter said, a state contribution rate, an employee contribution rate, but also has court fees that is contributed to the LICOS fund. Part of the issue with having a court fee is that it raises and lowers depending on the circumstances. And of course, with COVID, that went down. The amount of court fees went down. So when you have a funding strategy that is based on a formula that isn't steady, you start having unfunded liability. The same thing happened with state employees when you had a funding strategy that was slowly based on percent of payroll with the 9.5, 9.5. The number of state employees have decreased by 3.5% over the last 2 years. And I want to say that again, the number of state employees have decreased by 3.5%. The number of LICOS employees have decreased by 8%. So we have fewer employees doing more work and more complex work with the computers and the rules and the regulation and things like that. So there's a couple of issues there. One is when you look at LICOS, let's look at figuring out a funding strategy like we did on 321 for the main fund that doesn't cause another unfunded liability going forward. So we need to stabilize the funding strategy, and as Porter said too, pay the normal costs, and then you can start talking about the other things. My reference to the number of state employees is because, as Tyler said, there's crisis, and I'm going to be probably the third person that tells you up here today that state government will eventually implode if we don't do something about state employee salaries. There has been a long time since there's been an across-the-board state employee salaries. We know that inflation is very high. But even aside from that, just competitiveness in terms of working. I was a state employee for a number of years. State employees compete with the private sector and the federal government, cities and counties, and all the other things associated with. Loyalty doesn't pay your bills, but we have very loyal state employees, and you cannot live on loyalty alone. So when you go forward and you're looking at the funding for both the retirement system and the state employees, we'd appreciate you keeping that in mind. Now, in 2001, the last time the retirees were given a COLA, the average annuity was $17,673. That's not getting rich. And actually, that's not paying your bills. And right now, with inflation, and as you know, inflation's cumulative. We always talk about inflation the last 6 months or the last year, but inflation's cumulative. $1 in 2001 is now worth 62 cents. So we have a big impact on both our retirees as well as our active employees in terms of inflation. The final thing that I wanted to mention is that you can solve this. I know that this is not a sexy item. I know it's not the thing that you like to take back to your district and talk a lot about. But state employees and retirees is something that I know that the legislature can solve and can fund. And we look forward to working with you as we go forward.
Members, any questions or comments? Chair Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just appreciate the commentary of both of you. I mean, it's heartfelt, and we understand. And I think your comments about the future of Texas, and it's not a sexy topic for talking about funding these things, but it's a necessity. It's the blocking and tackling of government, and we've got to address it, particularly when we're in a good situation financially. And I think there's strong bipartisan support for that. So look forward to doing good things together. Thank you.
We all look forward to working with you.
Thank you.